In this video, we're going to recap on the day 11, round 10 of the Copa versus Wright Satoshi identity trial and get into two of the witnesses from today, and then also get into some of the really juicy information from a past transcript, unofficial, from our friend Kurt Walker Jr. regarding the Wright testimony about the watermark inside the Bitcoin white paper. So stay tuned for that. All right, so check this out. So first witness was David Bridges. He was a former colleague, actually a former banker associate or banker, consultant or client. Well, it was a colleague banker of Craig Wright back in the day from Australia, an Aussie. And Copa's line of questioning was about eliciting some testimony that corroborated with Mr. Wright. Dr. Wright had relevant technical experience and knowledge regarding the blockchain industry and concepts during the early years of Bitcoin prior to its launch. It lended some credibility to the claim of being Satoshi, but it wasn't Mr. Bridges. It was David Bridges. He wasn't able to independently substantiate Mr. Wright's claim and actually identify himself as Satoshi, to identify Wright as Satoshi. Prior to the 2015 outing by Wired and Gizmodo. So nor did Mr. Bridges provide any firsthand knowledge of any corroboration with Dr. Wright or specific involvement of coding and development. He talked about going to his house, seeing a lot of servers and computers, getting a lot of files from him, a lot of emails. Nothing was concrete, rubber stamp specific. So, as a neutral observer, if I were to evaluate that, it's really just kind of a moot witness. I mean, it yielded some credibility for Wright. However, it didn't, in the professional relationship. I mean, there was an exchange about how Copa asked him if he talked about going to the bank and using, he didn't say Bitcoin, but a system to replace their SWIFT. And so he did get into that a little bit. That was probably the strongest part of the testimony today, where he talked about that Wright had proposed their local bank in Australia use Bitcoin as a replacement for the SWIFT system that they were using on. And they didn't go for it at the time, he said, but that did give some foundational credibility. So it still remains inconclusive on the testimony alone on the identity issue of Satoshi Nakamoto. It wasn't like an ace witness. So Max Lynam was a second witness. Copa had a couple of objectives going after him. They wanted to determine the nature and extent. Max Lynam was a cousin of Dr. Wright. And so he had some interesting stories on a prior testimony that wasn't today, but that he talked about in the Granith case in Oslo, Norway, where he went into some early childhood stories and building computer boards, and he talked much more openly on the Granith testimony than he did today. Today was pretty direct, yes and no. I mean, it was Copa's mainly was just trying to determine the interactions between Wright relating to the unidentified computer code on farming equipment that Lyman had from 2008 to 2011. So Copa elicited some testimony about this activity that occurred, but Max Lynam was unaware of the code's functionality and the purpose at the time. So he was running this program at his farm, his dad's farm, and they'd been running it for 3 years, but just didn't have any foundational purpose as to what they were actually doing at the time. In hindsight, he found out much later in 2013 at a dinner when Wright came up to him and says, "Hey, you still have those computers that you were running?" He says, "Oh no, we got rid of all those." "Well, you guys were mining Bitcoin. There was value on that." So it wasn't until 2013 that he actually, after the computers were gone, that he realized he was mining Bitcoin. So, assessing whether Max Lynam had any firsthand knowledge prior to 2015 of Wright's alleged involvement in Bitcoin, as creator Satoshi Nakamoto, he didn't really provide any concrete evidence that he was aware he was Satoshi Nakamoto, had the identity of that, or, creator of Bitcoin until 2015. So despite running the code earlier, I mean, it's one of these things that it's kind of a fit, like, oh, it seemed like he was running the Bitcoin, but there wasn't any direct testimony like, I was running Bitcoin. Dr. Wright set me up to mine Bitcoin in 2010. No, that just wasn't 100% crystal clear. So while Max Lynam confirmed that running unidentified code for Wright during the relevant period, he maintained an ignorance to its purpose. So there wasn't any unambiguous admissions that Max made definitively to prove or disprove Wright's role as Satoshi being a first-hand witness. So, overall, it did establish some background of the relationship between Wright and Kleiman, and there was a connection that could be made with other witnesses. However, without some other witness testimony to kind of bridge the gap, it seems to be going on either side for that. So it's really kind of it's not like a big win for Dr. Wright or Copa. I mean, the witness isn't that helpful. So let's go on to the next. I'm going to save my discussion and evaluation for the Stephen Wright testimony for tomorrow, because he's only halfway done through today, and he's going to go into it tomorrow. And this is going to be, at least for now, we don't know who the other witnesses are. If there's any, there's a list of possible witnesses that are hearsay. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next, other than we know Matthews will be back tomorrow. So at this point, Matthews is going to be the key witness for Wright. So I'm going to leave tomorrow to go through all his testimony thus far, and then also go through tomorrow as well to discuss what else he describes. But it's really, really intense on the Matthews stuff. I mean, this is like super juicy. I'm literally on the edge of my chair on this one. So stand by for tomorrow's video to recap all that's going to be really, really freaking. I mean, literally, it's a bloodbath between Matthews and the Copa attorney, Mr. Hoff, where he's saying, "You're a liar. Admit you're a liar. Admit you're a liar. Admit this is all a forgery and a fallacy and a lie." I mean, he's hammering on these points. So we'll go over that tomorrow. But I do want to, let's go ahead and dovetail into this find here. This is on the testimony. This is from our friend Kurt Walker Jr. over with CoinGeek, and also his independent platform on Twitter. You can follow him at Kurt Walker Jr. on Twitter. And he's transcribing the daily, transcript unofficially. So none of this is official. This could be written in shorthand, and it may not be exactly precise. So take it for a grain of salt with that in mind. But let me just recap some of this, to go through what it actually says about the watermark. Oh, and then I'll also make a call here about who wins for today, but stand by for that. So check this out. All right, so this is back from February 9th. Wright's on the stand. Hoff is questioning Wright, and he's bringing up the expert witnesses. Rosenthal is the day where they're discussing Rosenthal. He says, Mr. Hoff for Copa, what about this expert? He says, Copa, do you accept that modifications would make it different? Right. Yes. Do you agree steps would need to make it reproduce? ? Right. Someone would need to work to make it like it was from open office. Now, again, in context here, we're talking about the white paper, how it was written, and getting into the watermark. All right, that's the context of the conversation here. So Wright says, someone would need to make it look like it was from open office. While I was writing on steganography and IT audit, things like snow allow white space watermarking to prove something was fingerprinted without being obvious. Jonathan Hoff for Copa. You want extraordinary effort to make this in LaTeX? Right. I was writing on steganography at the time and used the techniques in my papers, digital watermarking. He says, I was writing in steganography at the time and I used the technique in my papers, digital watermarking. Jonathan Hoff for Copa. To prove it was you? Right. More for fun. Copa, Jonathan Hoff. Doesn't that prove you were Satoshi? ? Right. It could help, but I didn't think it would be understood. I acted poorly when people didn't understand me, so it wasn't explained well. Cliffhanger. All right. That's the actual unofficial testimony from our friend Kurt Walker Jr. as to what happened. So, if you look at those words, if they are accurate, Wright is claiming that he wrote the white paper using steganography in a LaTeX program, using digital watermarking. All right, so that's the conclusion. And I'm going to just add some commentary from a non-steganography person, just some commentary from our friend Xiaowei Lu with a disclaimer that he's not an expert on this, but just his own, opinion at Scrypt. He says, I think Craig was claiming LaTeX file source could be watermarked using Snow. It's not generated, complied, Bitcoin, white paper PDF. Thus, it's futile to try to extract a watermark from the PDF, including from its white space preserving text version. The watermark, if present, can only be found in the original LaTeX file. And that's what that transcript really identifies there, is that if there is such a watermark, Craig's saying he used steganography at the time, which is this digital watermarking. At that time, he was into it. He just was studying it, and that's how he wrote it. That's what he testified to under oath. It was very clear and specific. So was Craig Wright lying? Let you be the judge of that. But this is definitely a cliffhanger. This is not over yet regarding this watermark thing. And, be mindful that the other side, that Wright's attorneys, Wright's solicitors are taking special instruction from Wright on next steps as they go forward. So that's a recap on today. Day 11, round 10 of the Copa versus Wright Satoshi identity trial. BTC Core was pretty silent today. They didn't appear at all. But today, I would say because of Matthews coming in, that really, really got strong. It's not, I don't know. I'd still have to say that there wasn't any big win. These witnesses didn't help Wright tremendously. So I'd have to call it for Copa, because it wasn't like, oh, these guys are closing absolute game changers. They didn't go over the top. The two witnesses that came in, they weren't, other than Matthews, I'm going to leave for tomorrow. We're going to leave Matthews for tomorrow. So but him aside, the first two witnesses aren't strong enough to build the whole momentum for Wright. So I would say today goes to Copa, and be mindful that Wright still has this very high burden to overcome regarding the rebuttal evidence, all right, from the experts, Rosenthal, Madden, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, about what happened with Edgar Hansen. That's going to be talked about today. We'll go over it tomorrow with some of the testimony from Matthews, but it looks like Wright's experts are potentially tainted, and his rebuttal evidence isn't very strong. So he's got a big hurdle to overcome. That's why this potential watermark on the white paper could be significant if it's possible. All right, that's it. Be sure to leave a comment, like the video, share the video, get the word out there. I've got a quick update here on our friend Calvin Ayre, the titan of blockchain. There's a lot of testimony in the courtroom here. I heard back from his assistant and said he's going to be traveling through April. So we're going to do our interview in April, just as a quick update. I am going to be doing something with Connor Murray on the new stuff from Bitcoin Association and network access rules. That's coming up. I'm just scheduling it. And also I have one coming from Michael Middleton. It'll be out on Saturday from Anarcho. But just briefly on the Titan of Blockchain interview, in hindsight, just because of the Matthews stuff's coming out today, and I mean, I would say a bulk of the testimony today was about Mr. Ayre. So in hindsight, it's probably wise for his assistant and he's advising him to wait. And so I would say, that was their decision. He's traveling until April, and so they're going to wait. It's probably best anyways, now that in hindsight, because all this stuff's coming out, and whatever that he says on this video, they're probably going to try to bring it up at trial, and say, Mr. Ayre was on Gavin Mehl's YouTube channel, and then they were talking about this case. It's like, that's just inappropriate because he's subject of the case right now. So I would totally support his decision. I don't know if it's his decision or his advisors, whoever's, or if they made the decision. It's just saying he's traveling and he can't do it. So either way, that's probably the right move. So all right, stand by for that. All right, I will look forward to the next video, and I'll see you guys at the top. This is Gavin Mehl.